Yeah, man, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess well, I mean, we haven't actually met before, so
Yeah.
it's nice to meet you.
You too, man. Yeah,
But yeah, I ended up working in like basically every sector. So I started like when I was 14 or 15, just like wanting to dunk basically. And so that essentially turned into like, a lifelong journey of like now what I do for a career. But I started out reading like textbooks for plyometrics. There was like a book called Power Plyometrics. Read that when I was like 14 or 15, and then
that's
started
young.
researching. What's that?
That's young to start on that stuff.
Yeah,
Everyone starts out with muscle and fitness.
No, I definitely like I definitely was a nerd about it. And I think like for me, especially in vertical jump training, like it was so gimmicky. I don't know if so I'm 28, I'm about to turn 29. So that would have been like, 2007 or 2008. Right. And YouTube was like kind of in its like infant stages, and you could find like, Team Flight Brothers was like a big account. They used to post a lot of dunking, and that kind of was like an inspiration for me. And so I always wanted to dunk because I was not super good at the actual skill part of sports, just because I didn't necessarily practice that much of it. I was decently athletic, but I was playing a lot of team sports where like, if you're in basketball or soccer or football, you're beholden to, whatever the coach is going to have you do or your teammates are going to have you do. So I didn't grow up with a lot of those players. Like they kind of like developed with or as a team coming up. And then I had like switched schools. So I like wasn't, in that group, and I wasn't like a standout. So I was like, oh, I know how I'll like become a standout. I'll dunk on them when I'm like 15 or 16. Like that'll be great. I'll be like the white Vince Carter. So I ended up just like researching as much as I possibly could because I wanted to dunk. And like I was saying, YouTube was so like all over the place, and there was so much misinformation. There still is a lot of misinformation, but at least there's more reputable sources now. So I was like trying to find out how to sift through the bullshit. Like, okay, what's valid, what's not valid. And I was like, the internet is basically just putting out all this like, gain 6 inches vertical in 6 weeks type of stuff, which isn't, true at all.
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases, I guess it could be. We've seen that happen before with guys, but it's incredibly rare. And they were like making guarantees. And so obviously, you do one program, you're like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is so stupid. Like, this is not even close to what happened. Some of the stuff is just BS. And then I just was like, what's the truth? Like, where's the, like, where's reality? Because there's all these claims that are just false. And so that's kind of what started me on my rampage of like, finding evidence-based, peer-reviewed, good literature that was valid, because it was just kind of like by being manipulated, right? You're a 14-year-old kid, you pay $50 for a program expecting your vertical to go up 6 inches, and then you're like, what the hell? Like, I still jumped 26 inches. Like, what is this? So yeah, I ended up reading that book and then started reading research when I was probably 15 or 16 on a website called Elite Track. And then from there, I was like, kind of sucked into sports science, like without even knowing it. I was just trying to jump higher and just kind of looking for answers because my parents didn't have resources to get me coaching. So I was like, I have to figure this out myself. Started doing high jump. And then that was kind of like where I guess, fell in love with track and field. And then kind of like, basketball and dunking was still there, but I had already dunked by that point, and I was like, okay, I like achieved my goal. Like, I actually dunked a basketball when I was 15. So I was
really?
Like,
that's early.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was 5'10" and 15. I think my vertical went up. I started training when I was 13, like doing the power plyometrics. I think my vertical went up probably within that summer. I think I gained 6 to 7 inches of vertical. So I went from like touching rim to dunking within like, well, I would say it was probably like touching rim. And then the summer I probably gained 3 or 4 inches of vertical. So part of that was like just developing. And then I was kind of stuck at that point with like my middle of my hand on the rim. And then I dunked a year later, and I was probably getting about here on the rim, on a 10-foot rim. So, I mean, obviously, like, I was already developed by that point. I was really early adaptations, just like doing plyos, and I was lifting and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah. So then I got into my undergraduate degree in sports science, and my mentor, Mike, are you familiar with Mike Young by chance? He does a lot.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Mike Young?
I like some of his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was my mentor actually. So he was, I think, finishing up at LSU, getting his like PhD in biomechanics. And so I'm like a 18-year-old getting mentored. Actually, he started mentoring me when I was like 17. So I'm getting mentored by arguably one of the best sports scientists, I mean, at least, by my standard of kind of like what I thought was valid and not valid. So, I mean, I think he's pretty good. I don't know what your opinion is, but
no, I agree.
So then I ended up just kind of, getting mentored by him for, I don't even know, for the next probably 7 years. And I ended up working for him, interned in collegiate football for like my second semester of school.
You want to talk about that?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many experiences like that I've had that my resume is like a laundry list long. That being one of them. I mean, it was good for me because like I had not had any formal internship at that time. Like I had trained myself, but that was the first time where I was really working with athletes. And I mean, like American football, you get so many genetic freaks. Like you have guys that, they have no clue how talented they are. They gain muscle mass like overnight. You're dealing with guys between 200 and whatever 360 pounds if they're linemen or whatever weight they are. So I mean, I was only there for a couple weeks, but I mean, you're up at 5 a.m. in the morning, like going to the weight room. You're there for 4 or 5 groups, and like I think it was like I had to learn to not over communicate because again, that was like the first time I'd ever really coached anyone, and I was like, I think I was 19 at the time, maybe 19 or 20. And I mean, I didn't know enough to really like take notes. I mean, they did Olympic lifts, which was good. Their Olympic lifting technique was really shitty. They squatted, so like solid. They did bench press, they did pull-ups. Like it was decent. But there was no speed work. There was really no like elastic work at all, but they were getting a lot of that on the field. So it wasn't terrible, actually. I would say like, I've seen some of the stuff that you've posted and I'm like, this is not real. Like, I think it was like I guess, I don't know. I don't mean to name drop, but it was like the Oregon.
Aaronfeld.
Yeah. Well, I was like, what is that? It was like on a Bosu ball, like saying about
$500,000 to go to Miami.
So ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wait, is he with what team is he with now? Like
he followed Cristobal to Miami. So I think it's $500,000 he got paid.
Wow. That is just mind blowing.
So,
what's crazy?
I want to say when he arrived at Oregon, he was on 200. He did 1 year, they bumped him 100. He did another year, they bumped him 100, and he was on 400 when he left.
What's his background? What does he even do? Like what is
played? I want to say he played at Arkansas. So my former boss coached him as an athlete.
Was your former boss not very good as a strength coach, or?
Oh no, he's awesome. Like he was sports scientist at the Houston Texans.
So how did this guy end up being?
Because he interned under Scott Cochran at Alabama. That makes. If you look at that like interpersonal manner, in my opinion, it's just a straight up copy. Like everyone that's come through that school behaves the same. They all say, they're really like that. That's really how they are. But, either that's not the case or you have this magical thing of recruiting and selecting people that behave exactly like you. So
I actually, one of my good friends, this was like another experience. When I went to my master's degree, I was working at an Olympic training site for weightlifting. So like, clean and jerk and snatch, like you're seeing some of the best US weightlifters in the country. This was in Northern Michigan. So it's like the smaller Olympic training site, but we had some of the guys from Colorado Springs, some of the women and men coming up to train occasionally. And his name's Paul. He ended up going and interning for Alabama football for, I want to say a year. He was with them. I mean, he's strong as shit, and he knows obviously he knows how to make people strong and get them good at the Olympic lifting. But I mean, I think it didn't seem like it was that gimmicky, like in comparison. But I mean, obviously when you're in like American football, you do dumb shit. Like it's like, you're going to do a plank hold for 5 minutes because like they want you to be tough, and you're going to do like, 100 barbell curls because like you want to get a bicep pump, or it's going to be a zoo. You're going to end up yelling at guys and like trying to get them to max out, doing shit that they probably shouldn't be doing. Like it's more of like an ego thing than it is, you know, sometimes like actual sports performance. So I think having talked to him about that, like, you know, Scott Cochran he's like a personality, you know, and I think like that's almost more important, is that you're a hype man.
Unquestionably.
And, yeah,
unquestionably.
you have to play the part.
To me, that's what it is, because he was the first big example of someone behaving like that, and he had all of the success that came with Alabama.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we humans, we're dumb. We look at what works and we're like, oh, he behaved like that and got, you know, however many national championship rings. If I behave like that,
it works.
It's, you know, you see, obviously there's this success in the Saban coaching tree. Guys go off and get their own jobs. So then they're like, oh, I'll just take one of the Alabama staff with me. And of course they're going to pick and hire and train in their own image in that staff. So they're just picking like a mini Scott Cochran clone, and then that goes out, and then you get another coach that goes to another team. Oh, well, they did that and they had success. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to get my guy. And to me, it becomes this thing where people are behaving for the paycheck and the job that they want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely kind of like, I mean, I worked in collegiate track and field, you know, I did a year volunteer coaching in Michigan. And then I did a year, I was actually kicked off my collegiate track team. It's actually a hilarious story, kind of for the exact thing that you're talking about, talking shit about it. So Mike Young had a website. It was called Elite Track. I don't know if you ever remember Elite Track, but it was like pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. There was a lot of good coaches on there that would like post pretty regularly. It was like pretty evidence-based. A lot of people that coach collegiately now at a high level were involved in that website. And so, you know, it's like after Charlie Francis's forums had kind of died, or it was like kind of during that phase, but maybe a little bit after.
I think when he started, I think he died in 2012. So he was sick kind of like at the time that you came up. So
yes. Yeah. So I never really saw the old forums, but obviously like it was Elite Track was kind of my introduction to that. But anyways, yeah, I ended up, you know, how he trains people is he has them write blog posts to kind of like, you know, familiarize yourself with writing, because that's a good way to put your name out there, to kind of like, you know, learn through being challenged with like a new concept that maybe you haven't ever like talked about, or then you have to research. And then the best way to learn something is to like overlearn it and then teach it. So, you know, like having written these blogs, you know, I was kind of, again, coming up in the coaching field. Forums were kind of dying, blog posts were kind of dying, but like, I was like, whatever, you know what I mean? I'm still going to like write as much as I can. And so, you know, I ended up posting a blog post that was basically like things not to do in the weight room. And it was like, Olympic lift with straps, like multi-rep jerk maxes with suboptimal form at maximal loads, like dropping the bar with metal plates when you have bumper plates sitting directly next to you, dropping the bar onto safety racks, like safety pins when you have bumper plates. Like it was like yelling at having people know standards, like having people quarter squat max, calling it a back squat max, like not reliable testing equipment, hand timing 30-meter dash times, and then claiming they're like 3.5 when it's like a 4.8. Like, you know, it's just kind of basic stuff, but I was like, this is like unacceptable. I'm seeing this at a collegiate level. And so the coach saw it like within a day. I don't know how, I still don't to this day know how, and sent me the most like flagrant offensive email I've ever received in my entire life. He's like, you'll never be successful. You're never going to be a coach. Like, talks so much shit about me. And then I was like, okay, I assume I'm off the team then. And I was like, I'll have the post moved immediately. Yeah, so that was like how I got kicked off my collegiate track team. And then it's like, once you're not an athlete, you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. Like that's how almost every single track coach I've ever met ends up in the sport coaching, is they were an athlete themselves at a very high level, got in with a school that either they're like whatever their school or they're an alumni of, they just kind of step into that volunteer position and then get the role. Or, you know, it's like one of those things where the coach is like, oh, well, you can be a GA and then you work into this position. Like I've seen that happen so many times. So, you know, I didn't have that progression. Like I went to grad school. I was like, I'm going to get a job by being the best. Like that's going to be my approach to this. I'm going to get as many experiences as possible. I'm going to work at Altus, work with Olympians. I'm going to work with Mike Young's PhD in biomechanics. I'm going to go to work with collegiate football. I'm going to work with, you know, collegiate track and field. So I'm going to just study my ass off. And then like, you know, that's how I'm going to do it. Well, that was stupid as hell. Like everyone knows that doesn't work. Like being the best means nothing unless you like make a name for yourself other ways, which I kind of had to do. So I ended up going to Duke and volunteering as a coach. And it was actually after I had stopped with Mike. I had applied to 20 schools. I got one interview with a D3 school to make $20K a year. And that was the only interview I got. And my resume, I had a master's degree. I had like thousands and thousands and thousands of volunteer experiences. My network was incredible. One interview. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, this is ridiculous. So then I quit like coaching. I was like, fuck this. I'm done. Like, I don't want to do it. I ended up starting my business THP and then going to Duke. And I was literally told at Duke that I could not get a job because I was a white male. And I was like, what? They fired their high jump coach. There was a high jump position open and they couldn't hire me because I was a white male. And I was like, that sucks. But like, you know, I understand that there's like, this is what it, you know, it's like to be discriminated against every day. It's just like, and the field I happened to pick, like, you know, I just got kind of screwed over at that time. And so like, I was almost, I just like gave up on it. I was like, collegiate coaching is like, not a joke, but it's like there's so much politics and like BS I don't even care about. You know what I mean? Like I don't even give a shit about that. All I want to do is take little nerdy kids and make them into freak athletes. That's all I want to do. That's my passion. I want to take kids and make them, you know, freaks. And so, yeah, I was like, I, you know, started my business, and really after that experience, I really focused on building THP to kind of what it is today. And like, you know, being the powerhouse of elite jumpers, I like to think. I don't know how, I guess I don't even know how familiar you are with what we do. I used to post quite a bit on Instagram, and we did have a podcast. Yeah. I mean, what's your lens on it?
I mean, that's why I asked you on, because obviously it's like you post up these videos of guys who are just like, fucking hell, that guy's jumping really high. And then, like you said, it's almost like that reverse discrimination, like you're the springy white guy.
Yeah.
And, it reminds me of a joke. Zach Galifianakis, he did this stand-up back in the day, and one of his jokes, he said, oh, I was the only straight kid at an all-gay high school, and they always used to ask me, oh, Zach, where are you going to go get some pussy? Like, yeah, you're being discriminated against as a white male. But no, that was why I wanted to speak to you, just because I think you got like the three legs of the stool. Like, I think your business stuff is really good, and I wanted to ask you about that. But then the science, it's funny you mentioned track and field, because you can see, I was going to ask you, you can see from the programming those track and field influences and concepts. And then also the ability to like back it up with training, clientele, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, do you want to talk about business? Like,
yeah, I mean, I would love to. I mean, business is probably now it's probably now one of my bigger passions. I would say, like, we do things a little bit differently. You know, Isaiah's my business partner. He's also the co-owner. It didn't start with him as the co-owner. I started the business from like my parents' kitchen table. I was literally living it. I was the definition of like, you know, the Steve Jobs story of like living in your, maybe not Steve Jobs, but like living in your parents' basement, doing a startup, like, you know, that kind of mentality. I was actually going back to school to become a physician assistant, because I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm sick of making 20K a year. Like, there's no upside to this. I've tried to get a job. Like, I'm highly educated. This is just, it's like learned helplessness. You're like, I've done everything I can control to get a job. There's nothing else I can do. I can't sacrifice any more than I already have. I've already invested thousands of volunteer hours. Like, you know, I have to do something else to be able to pay the bills. Yeah, I was like, I have to do something else. I felt backed into a corner. And so I was working as an electrician for my stepdad. I was literally a plumber and electrician. I was, you know, that's what I was doing. And I was like living in my parents' basement in my hometown of like 2,000 people. You know, it's like a BF nowhere outside of Pittsburgh, you know, on the East Coast of the States. And I was like, I got to make money. So I was like, hey, I'll just like, you know, have people, I hope the IRS isn't listening, but I was like, I'll have people Venmo me or PayPal me, and like, you know, just $80 a month, you know, I'll have 10 people. That way I can pay for my car, and I can pay for gas, and I can pay for food if I need to. Right. And I'll work for $10 an hour with my stepdad. So I just gave him my number. I set up TeamBuildr as the app that we use.
They sponsor our site.
Oh yeah. Shout out TeamBuildr, Hewitt, great guy. He's a really good guy. So yeah, I ended up doing that, and I started with 10 athletes, and I just coached them. You know, I would literally manually text them and say, hey, your payment's due. I had like a spreadsheet. It was just kind of like, you know, fundamental stuff. Like, do the work, collect the money. I had a full inventory that I made in like a week. I basically went to one of the local gyms that it was a PT clinic, and I filmed all the videos. And yeah, so I had 10 athletes, started there. And then I was like, you know, I think I can get to 20, you know, I think I can get to 20. So I was posting a lot. Kind of one thing that I'd been told at Altus was don't release a product until you have an audience that wants to buy it. And so I've kind of told people that before, is like, don't just release a product and then market it. Like, market yourself first, or market that you're skilled or you have like something to offer, at least in what I was doing, where you're providing a service. You know, make sure you've shown how credible and reliable and valid what you're saying is, because like no one really is going to give a shit about a service you're offering until they know that you know what you're talking about, especially in our field where, again, there's a ton of misinformation. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna grow my brand through all these internships. Like I was told, like, you know, just post videos. So that's what I did. I was just like, look, here's a Olympian. Here's Andre DeGrasse running, doing a block start. Here's Javid Best, previous NFL running back, doing a block start. Here's Greg Rutherford, long jumping 28 feet. I didn't know I was going to start a business, but I was like, you know, the worst case, you know, I'm at this internship. I should at least show people like I'm trying to develop myself as a coach. I'm not just here to take videos or because I'm interested or curious. Like, I'm here to learn. But this is shit no one sees. No one's watching Greg Rutherford in practice every day. No one's seeing Andre DeGrasse's med ball throws, or like, you know, things that would be interesting. And I never posted anything that would undermine the athletes. Like, there were things I could have posted from, like, you know, Fabrice Lapierre, like doing a med ball or like a shot put overhead back that was just like,
I heard that guy is such a fucking space cadet.
Fabrice, oh, so Fab is like, he's a good guy. He is a space cadet for sure. Like, I could definitely see that. I mean, it's funny now to say that, but he's just like, a lot of those guys are. They're just like, they don't know what they don't know. You know, you have Dan Paff, who's largely considered to be like one of the best track coaches ever. Yeah. And so I'm like interning underneath Dan, and like, you know, these guys have no clue. Like, they just like Greg, I remember him saying like, I can't even do a British accent. I love to do accents, but I can't do my British accent. My Australian one's a little better. Maybe I should do Fab. Like, he'd be like, oh yeah, just going head here. Can I do some standing long jump? Maybe throw some overhead deck. And then like, he'd be like, just fucking around the whole practice or whatever. And then it's like, you see him do a short approach jump and he jumps like 750. And you're like, this is unbelievable. Like, they don't even know how they do it. They're just like, I'm a freak and I showed up and I can do this. Like, they oblivious. That's largely how it was. The athletes that overthought stuff, I would say, are the ones that were actually worse. The ones that were so talented that like,
I had the same conversation with Jonas Tariadodu, and he came up under Dan, and we were talking about coaching, and his thing is like, with that dynamic systems learning theory, he would rather them arrive at the solution implicitly than him tell them and then have them have to think about it. Because he said, when the gun goes off, you don't want an athlete that's thinking. You want an athlete that's just reacting and executing.
Exactly.
You have to think about how you put the information in.
Yeah, no, I actually 100% agree. And it's funny because like, Dan loves to communicate. Like, he loves to teach, and he like is hilarious. And a lot of what he says is like, I kind of relate to in a lot of ways. Like, he'll be like, oh yeah, the fascial system and what we're seeing here in the gastroc-soleus complex working into the Achilles. And like, he'll go into that shit. And meanwhile, it's like the athlete doesn't care. You know, I mean, they have no clue, but it does. Sometimes it builds rapport, which I think is really good, even though some people like shit on that. But then when Dan does communicate, it can be like hilarious, or like some of the stories he would tell you when he was just trying to get a point across. Like, he's very personable as well. And I think that it builds buy-in. Then he builds rapport by showing like he's a, you know, powerhouse. His reputation's unbelievable. He's super knowledgeable. But then he can communicate things like in a very understandable way, like a very digestible way. But it is funny. I find myself doing the same things he does, like over communicating or talking about shit, just because he loves it. Like, Dan is the type of person that he loves what he does and he loves to teach. And so if he has an opportunity to talk to an athlete and teach them, like, he enjoys that. I think it burns him out sometimes.
The best thing I learned for efficiency of communication was coaching in a foreign language.
Oh my God, yes.
By default.
He would literally coach Spanish, and he would just be like, he'd be coaching in Spanish because some of the athletes only spoke Spanish. And he'd just be like, I don't know Spanish, but he'd like say it. He'd say one word and then like do a thing. And then they'd be like, oh, like this. And he's like, whatever. And then they just go and do it. And you're like, you have to be so good at communicating and so like clear, concise, and because you don't know all the words. Your vocabulary is limited. But yeah, that's definitely like a good way that he would always talk about. He'd be like, if you want to really test yourself, like coaching a different language. Like, I don't know, what were you coaching in? Like what language?
Spanish, Japanese. Yeah. So I did 3 years in Argentina, and then so with that I never had any lessons, no nothing, because I mean all the boys played in Europe, so I would say the average number of languages was at least 2, and then a lot of them spoke 3 or 4 because they would play in Italy, France, or England. So I just started speaking Spanish, and they kind of help you along. So yeah, by the end of that, I was like fluent coaching in Spanish. You could have dropped me in Buenos Aires, no problem. But then I got recruited to go to Tokyo after that. And then 1, with Japanese being so difficult as it is, and then 2, they have an interpreter on staff for all of the foreign members of staff. So you kind of become reliant on them. But I mean, I could just about survive by the end of the 2 years there. But I have a son who's half Japanese now. He's 3 years old, and he'll come back from Tokyo and he speaks better Japanese than me. So
and you're like, shit.
yeah. But I can still understand when his mother's talking about me. Yeah,
that's the only thing you need to know.
Oh yeah. So with the business stuff.
Oh yeah, sorry. You'll notice this if you ever listen to our podcast. We bounce around a ton.
I have, yeah.
People shit on us all the time for it. I'm like, but you're still listening.
So I was going to ask.
You can edit it out in post production. Go ahead.
Oh no. So, is it by accident that you picked the niche of dunking? Because obviously,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like someone told me, the more focused you are in business, the more money you make. It's like starting a fire with a magnifying glass. If you're always moving it around, you never make any money. And obviously, we can talk more about him. But like Ben Patrick, to me, is an example of like big eye roll, hyper niche, making money almost at the expense of the validity of the information.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say like there's some truth to that. You know what I mean? I think like the thing that I've kind of learned is, yeah, you are pigeonholing yourself. Yes. It doesn't mean you only have to do that, but that's what you're going to be, that guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm the jump guy. We're the dunk coaches, right? That's kind of like how we're pigeonholed. I mean, you've heard my background. Like I could coach rugby. I could coach football. I could coach soccer. I could coach any of those sports, but like, I'm the jump guy. I could coach sprints. I've probably have more sprint experience than a lot of the sprint coaches that coach at the D2 or D3 level in some ways, right? Like how many guys have gotten to work with Andre DeGrasse or Aries Merritt or, those athletes, and high jump as well. I was a high jump guy, but now I'm coaching dunking. And it's like that I think happened because Isaiah is a pro dunker and people see the way he dunks and they're like, oh, I want to dunk like him. Like when I started, it was a mixed bag. It wasn't like that. It wasn't until I brought Isaiah on that I would say I was the tendon guy first. Like before anyone was talking about tendon health or anything like that, that's where I was. I was pigeonholed as that person. And I was like, this is kind of my thing now. I do patella tendinopathy. That's my specialty because I had partially torn my patella and come back from it.
There's a huge appetite financially for vertical jump and dunking, more than any other. Like I think maybe there's that
more than sprinting.
Pitching velocity.
Oh yeah.
And 40-yard dashes. That's it.
Yep. Me. I agree with that. And I think it's like the flashy stuff though. Like, I mean, vertical jump's cool as shit. I love vertical jump. I think it's I think it's better than throwing. I think it's cooler than, sprinting fast is cool. I actually like change of direction more. I think change of direction is cooler than sprinting because I saw sprinters at an elite level that sucked at sports. And I like sports more than I just like, I like sprinting because it's a demonstration at the highest level of one of the cooler aspects of sport, right? Like you watch Lamar Jackson on a field, he's like mesmerizing, right? I honestly don't watch track sprinters specifically and go, wow, that's mesmerizing. Like even when I see it in person, there's no context. You don't have a human being on the field that is going to get their ankles broken like you have in basketball. Yeah, exactly. That really puts things in perspective. And dunking, like it's funny, like high jump is honestly, as far as like physical capacities are concerned, high jump is way more impressive. But you have guys that literally are getting displacements with flight times of 50 plus inches. You're not seeing that in dunking. You're seeing like conversions of toe off to touchdown of probably 42, maybe. High jump is seeing flight times of in excess of that using vertical velocities and things like that, right? Like 3D motion analysis.
42 inches with an approach. Really?
Well, so that would be like with the flight time, like from toe off like this, not the way that they do it on a Vertec, to touchdown, the toe touching down using 240 frames per second. Like the My Jump 2 app is, you know, you'll see guys drop their vertical inches on the My Jump 2 app because it doesn't bias, you know what I mean? It's not going to bias something.
Like, because you've got like whatever difference there is between heels flat and, you know.
Like if you wear a size 16, all of a sudden your vertical's inflated by a foot, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Like it's going to take that out. So yeah, when you're seeing, you know, I've seen Isaiah's flight times, I've seen 0.97 off an approach. CJ is probably 0.95. And obviously the configuration, like the inter-rater reliability, so from person to person, is really low. Like you really can't compare with any accuracy Isaiah to CJ to you to me, because if I jump off one foot, I land in a completely different configuration than you land, than Isaiah lands, and CJ lands. So you can't really compare. But if you do, like, it's that accuracy is better and more valid when you're looking at, like, you know, a right-left jumper who lands in a relatively similar configuration to Isaiah. And you're only going to know that if you have like a coaching eye, you know what I mean? If you land with your arms up in the air and one hand and your knee up on one leg, like your flight time is going to drop significantly in that configuration. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's better for landing, but it's not better if your goal is to get a high flight time. You know, landing in a quarter squat with your arms down, that's a better, your center of mass is in a relatively lower configuration, or sorry, your limbs are in a lower configuration, your body's in a lower configuration. So your center of mass is landing in a lower position than the person whose limbs are up in the air. So your flight time is going to be inflated. And so I think, you know, like high jumpers, that bias is taken out. All that, I don't want to say conjecture, but like variability is taken out because they're looking at 3D motion analysis using 2 cameras, 240 frames per second. They have a tree, they calibrate it, you know, and you're seeing vertical velocities of like, they're insane. They equate to over 50 inches in vertical leap for sure, easily. And, you know, dunking, you don't see that, but there's a basketball hoop in dunking. There's not a basketball hoop in high jump. So, you know, you can do your best. You ever see the Mutaz Barshim picture where they like put the hoop behind the high jump mat? Like that kind of puts it in perspective, but not really. Whereas if you have a hoop and you see Isaiah go up and he gets his chin to the rim, people are like, what the fuck? Like everyone's seen a basketball hoop before. Everyone knows how high a basketball hoop is. Everyone knows how high about 6 foot is, and that's how, you know, he's 6'1", 6'2". And so I think it's like, you know, people see that in basketball. There's so much money in basketball. And, you know, like I happened into it. I kind of got lucky in that aspect. I would have rather had a safe position as an S&C coach in football, making $80K a year with benefits. But like, I was like, you know, I'll start my own business. Like it'll work out. Maybe I'm going to be a PA, like F this whole strength coach thing. You know, there's not enough positions to go around, and it really doesn't even matter how good you are. It just matters who you know. So I think, you know, there's definitely some truth to that, but I think you have guys like Mike Boyle, you know, who he probably makes a shit ton, you know, and I don't know, but I would say
each of his facilities profit a couple of million a year, and he has multiple facilities.
Yeah. And then he has an online platform. Yeah. He has an online platform on top of that. Like, you know, I think Eric Cressy mostly does throwing, but I know he probably, you know, does other things. You know, you got same thing. I mean, Mike is kind of pigeonholed into soccer now, Mike Young, and it's like he was never a soccer guy, but he coaches everything. And it almost is a detriment to him if he were to just do online coaching, because people are going to be like, well, what do you do? I can do soccer, I can do basketball, I can do all these things at a super high level, but you know, you can pick whatever you want. And people are like, well, what do you do? Like they know you as that guy. Like you're the rugby strength coach. You're the rugby guy. You're the rugby guy who posts memes. Like that's your thing, right?
I'm becoming the meme guy.
Oh, you're the meme guy now. Oh, you're the meme
guy.
guy.
Well, you know, I met a bunch of coaches over the last few weeks, and I would say at least 3/4 of them mentioned to me memes and debating Joel Seedman. So.
Oh yeah. You definitely do that as well, which is I personally don't like. For me, it's tough because like I only care if I have competitors. Like Joel Seaman, I don't even view him as a competitor. He's like a completely different niche. You know what I mean? I don't even know. But in the vertical jump space, it's very, very, very competitive. Like you have me, Dan Back, PJF, you know, that are kind of more so in that area. Joel Smith, I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, I've been on his podcast a couple of times.
He's never asked me. He doesn't like me.
What?
Because I know. I think it's because we're competitors. I really think it's because we're competitors. I mean, you don't want to put your, someone that's doing basically the same job as you. You don't want to be like, oh, let me give you a platform to.
Talk to me about Ben Patrick in that regard. What is it you think? Because I know someone that knows him.
I know him personally.
Oh, you do? Okay. So this guy was hired by Ben. This is like back in the day, yep, to get a program. And what he sent to Ben apparently is now like there's a thread of that in every program that goes out to his training groups. And I heard, these crazy numbers. I think it was like, I want to say 25,000 people, $50 a month or something like that. It's like a crazy recurring revenue each month.
Yeah, I don't know how much I can say. Like, am I allowed to talk about this stuff? I don't know. I mean, I can share my opinion and I can tell you what I do know. I mean, I know that that might even sometimes have been on the low side right now.
Especially now he's been on Joe Rogan.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, there's so many things that like have happened that I literally told Isaiah before this, I was like, what if he asked me about Ben Patrick? And he was like, what are you going to say? And I was like, no comment. I was like, I don't know what I can say.
For me, what it is, I'm not going to ascribe, lack of integrity or whatever to his character. However, I think the challenge that you have when you do this for a living is money, especially online, comes from scale. And obviously with scale, you need to have repeatability and consistency. And humans and athletes and training by its very nature is an unscalable endeavor. So you're trying to put one thing into another thing that doesn't fit. But
I don't even think that would be something he would know.
Well, that's the thing. you can make a ton of money online training people if you're willing to water down the training to such an extent that it is scalable, or not know about it. You can knowingly do it and be cynical for the money, or just do it because you don't know any better. And it's
the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay.
Like, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, everyone starts out and they think they're an expert. And then once you start to realize stuff, you realize you're pretty dumb. And eventually you realize, like, 10 years down the line, I've been reading research since I was 13. So now it's been, or 14. So it's been 14, almost 15 years of doing that, right? Almost half my life. And my brother's getting his PhD. Like, my mentor had a PhD. I'm in research as well as I am as a coach. So for me, it's like, and having had that experience of, like I said at the beginning, like being, scammed, more or less, right? And being misinformed and just kind of taking things like as true because someone else said it was true, but that doesn't actually make it true. Just because you said it's true or I said it's true doesn't actually make it true. It matters if it's actually true. And so when you make claims like, unsubstantiated claims, and you just say things that, I would say now that it's probably, I mean, I've told him, I had a call with him where Isaiah talked about his experience once, and then we essentially took it down. We took the video down because he more or less asked Isaiah to, and I was like, you do whatever you want to do. I think you should take it down because
this is on his site.
This was Isaiah posted a YouTube video. Isaiah trained with Ben for, I think, 6 months before. So he worked with me, got healthy, got his knees better, got his vertical up to 43, 44. Trained with ATG, and his vertical went down for probably 6 months. Storied the whole thing on his YouTube, and then basically came crawling back to me and was like, please help me. And I was like, no, I'm kidding. I was busy. This is when I was starting my business, actually. I was so busy. I was like taking classes. I wasn't really taking on like free training, and Isaiah was kind of doing his own thing. I was in the process of moving, all this other stuff. And so I got settled, and Isaiah had asked me, and I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I have no problem training you for performance. Before I was training you for your knees, but I'll train you for performance. And so Isaiah had posted about his experience, and he basically just said, I did the program, I didn't jump any higher. I think that what we're doing now is evidence-based, is peer-reviewed, it's better, and made a convincing argument for that. Basically, Ben was like, as a friend, can you take it down? And, I had said, you make that decision, Isaiah. And he wanted to talk to us on the phone. And I was like, why do you want to talk to us why do you want to talk to me on the phone? Like, you know, I met him at dunk camp and stuff like that. And he had kind of talked shit about me in his story. And I had posted like him putting his knees together on a story post once. And I was like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like I would not squat this way. That's basically what I said on it. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I wouldn't squat this way personally. That's my opinion. And again, this is all my opinion. So I just want to make that clear. And
you don't want a litigious Scientologist on your case.
Yeah. So exactly. I mean, you're you know more than I. You probably yes. You know more than I expected. So yeah, I basically was just like, I knew a lot of the stuff that I'd heard, and basically was like, this is a situation of like, you don't necessarily know what you don't know. You know, you're speaking to the masses, but like what you're saying is not necessarily valid, especially as someone, you know, who has researched tendon health a shit ton and has talked to Ebony Rio and has talked to Jill Cook and has talked to, you know, looked at all the research around PFP and chondromalacia and things like that, and making claims like, oh, well, there's just, the science isn't caught up yet. That's why. Like, that's completely false. The science is there. The science is very much there, and it's very much valid. And, you know, there's the data that he doesn't have data. It's just like testimonials saying it worked, right? But then, you know,
but where the hidden
I don't know if he has data. I to my understanding, it's, here's a good testimonial, here's a good success story, right? I don't know, let's say that the numbers you said are accurate, but if you have 5,000 to 6,000 people, you know, that are success stories on your Instagram and your bio, well, if you have 25 to 30,000 people a month, your success rate is 20%, 25%, and that's for a month. So if that's over the lifetime of your business, which let's say is, you know, I don't know, let's say you started in 2018. So that's, you know, the average of all that time, you know, I don't know how many athletes work with that. It's a shit ton of people. You know, it's like,
it would be surprising if you didn't have several thousand people.
Yeah. Right. Your success rate, if you had a 10% success rate with 100,000 people, that would be fucking horrendous. 10% is terrible. Right. But like, you know, it's like, if you have 100,000 people, of course, like you should have that many, and maybe you're just the one that counted them and you're the one that took the time to keep up. But like, I have the, you know, on my website, like we track tendon pain every single day. Like I have the actual data. I don't have a testimonial. Like I have progressive pain scores 1 to 10 with, you know, here's 1 to 3 is what a 1 to 3 feels like. Here's what a 4 to, you know, 7 feels like. Here's what an 8 to 10 feels like. If you're at this pace, put this number. If you're here, put this number. Using decimal to the decimal point over longitudinal periods of months, seeing those tendon pain scores drop below a 3 with increases in load, right? Like with that program, it's like, oh, a lot of the time what can happen when you do that is if you just do strength work and you avoid pain all the time, when you go back to jumping again, you're going to have pain immediately. That's a lot of the time what happens. So, I mean, that's
because you're imposing load on a tendon that it's degraded, but it feels better.
Yeah. So like if you do, the capacity of a tendon, and this is according to research, this isn't even my words, these are Jill Cook's words. Yeah. It's basically like, look, you know, you're along this continuum, doesn't matter where you are on the continuum, using symptoms as a guide or a gauge. If it is tendon pain, so quad pain, quad tendinopathy or patella tendinopathy, Achilles tendinopathy, is like your capacity is dictated according to how well you tolerate load. So that is across a week, as well as a day, as well as, you know, the type of loading that you do within the day. And so there's like 3 to 4 different types of load that you could really put on a tendon if you view it as an extension spring. You have an isometric contraction where it's just holding the load. And then you have like a slow rep where now you're stretching and shortening that tendon, right? Like a back squat or something like that, slow. Then you could do a faster back squat, which would be a little bit faster on the tendon. And then you could do something where it's like just absorbing load. So this would be kind of the next hierarchy of intensity where, okay, now I'm just going to step off a box and now I catch. Now that tendon stores that energy, and then it dissipates obviously as you kind of come back to resting and standing up. And then you have a stress shortening cycle, right? So now it's okay, now I'm going to do a box jump. Okay, stress shortening, and then I land. Okay, now you have a stress shortening cycle of the patella, you land, you have a stretch, but it's less because you're jumping up to an object, so gravity's not accelerating you back down. And then you might have something like a depth jump. Now you're falling, landing with a lot of force, and then landing on the ground again. So you have multiple stress shortening cycles. Then you go into an approach jump, right? Well, if you just say, okay, go play basketball, you've basically gone to the very end of that continuum. You went from doing slow, full range of motion, lightweight exercises. If you're doing, let's say split squats, like at 25 pounds and you're getting your ankle mobility really good and you're doing reverse Nordics or, whatever exercise you're doing. And then you're like, okay, now I'm just going to go back to basketball. Well, you've missed a huge part of that continuum and you can't automate that. You can't. From experience, if you have a tendon issue, it's highly dependent on that person and how you cycle that and the frequency at which you put those elastic loads and how much you put in is highly independent, highly individual, and is progressed in a nature that's dependent on pain. So if you don't have someone to tell you, oh, you're at this pain level, at this functional state, go to the next step and do this much of it before you go into the next one. And then what do you even follow those days up with, right? Do you just lift every day? Like you have to have a pretty concrete plan, like you said, unless you're willing to kind of water everything down, and kind of just like sell out. And I'm not willing to do that. So I think like on the business side of things, like the difference was, okay, who do we want to be? Are we okay being the Lamborghini, or do we want to be Chevrolet? Do we want to be Toyota? Do we want to be, these other brands that are, appealing to the masses? Like now you have companies that are like Ford's like, oh, I'm going all EV. We're not even going to sell anything petrol. We're not going to sell petrol anymore. We're just going to be EV for after 2025. Okay, well, you're appealing to the masses right now because you're trying to make as much money as possible, maybe in the future or even now in some cases. But like, Lamborghini, they're like, yeah, we don't give a shit. We're gonna just put out the we're gonna put out the V10. We're gonna put out the V12. We don't do ads. We don't do anything. You see our car and you see it on the road and you're like, holy shit, that's a Lamborghini. How did you know? Because it's got an angular shape. It's loud as shit. It looks gorgeous. Like you don't see ads for it. You don't, what I mean? People post their cars. That's how you see it. People drive their cars. That's how I kind of view THP is like, I don't tell people to do my program. I don't market my program.
Really?
No, I don't. We don't spend any money on advertising. We spend $0 on advertising. We don't do podcasts right now. We used to. We don't do that anymore. We don't, even on my page, you won't even really see me tag THP Strength in my posts. You won't see me tag it in my stories. I don't post my athletes. They tag me in their stuff and I repost it because I'm fortunate enough to not have to do that anymore, right? Like instead of telling people how great I am, it's like, look at my athletes, like look at the product itself. I saw a comment one time and it was like, oh shit, I saw someone walk in with a THP shirt on, like right across their chest. And I knew immediately they had bounce. It's like, that's the reputation I want to have. Right. Like if you see a McLaren logo on a car, you're like, oh shit, that thing's fast as fuck. Like you see Tesla and it's like, oh, that thing was 0 to 60 in this time. Right. And I think like, that's how I've wanted to do it is I don't want to sell out and have a 70-hour work week where my life is consumed with, managing 25,000 or 30,000 clients. Like, would I like more money? Sure. But like, I wasn't willing to make claims that were unsubstantiated. I wasn't willing to tell a narrative that is a really convicting, like, story of how my body was destroyed for so many years. And like, look at me, I'm a success story like that. Like you have an N of 1 and people like being able to tie in the emotional part of a human being and be like, oh, it was so bad. I want to like, my knee was like, I could do that for myself. Yeah. He's just like me. I need to do this. Right. And it's like, well, that's a fallacy. Like that's a logical fallacy. And a lot of the things that you see in marketing are logical fallacies, like, especially in strength and conditioning. It's like, oh, well, I did this, so it's going to work for you. Well, is that true for everyone? Is that true for the masses? Like, you don't know that.
Appeal to authority, the availability heuristic, like all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
You read Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow?
No, Isaiah has actually. He's like a book nerd. A lot of the times
he won the Nobel Prize for economics, writing about cognitive biases and heuristics, even though he, is a cognitive psychologist, never had anything to do with economics, but he won the Nobel for economics because people always hypothesized about a rational market, and his research demonstrated that humans are not economically rational. So the first study that ever demonstrated this, there was a daycare in Israel. And at that time, if you picked up your child late, there were no fines. So they theorized, hey, if we impose a fine on people because they're economically rational, they won't want to spend the money of the fine and they'll pick up their kids earlier. And it went completely the opposite direction because they thought, oh, I've spent the money now, I might as well use it. So like that's how his work found a footing in economics. It's pretty interesting.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And it's also like, as you grow a business and you learn about the different ways to kind of approach it. Like for me, it was, I want to be like a mom and pop company in my hometown that is like known for baking the best bakery. That's what I always say is like, I want to be like we have a bakery in my hometown. It's called Kretschmar's. Kretschmar's is known within like a 30-mile to 40-mile radius of being like the best. In kilometers, that's roughly 70. No, I'm kidding. I actually don't know. But but it's like known as being one of the best bakeries, right? And so it's like, oh well, you want to get a birthday cake for someone or something else, you go to Kretschmar's. It's really small. It's on Main Street in Beaver. It's like real estate there is probably 50 or 10% what it costs in the Bay Area. Like, it's, you don't know about it unless someone tells you about it. And so in our area though, it's like, oh, you got this almond raspberry cake from Kretschmar's. Like that's just amazing. It's the best thing I've ever tasted. And I'd rather be that than I would be like Dunkin' Donuts or Dairy Queen or something, right? Like you could be Dairy Queen, right? If you're willing to kind of like market to the masses. Like at the end of the day, I mean, taste is subjective, but if you have a lot of people saying like, this is really good shit.
I say to my old assistant all the time, never underestimate the taste of the average strength and conditioning coach.
So you're basically saying like the average is like better or worse? I mean, I guess
way worse.
The average strength
conditioning. Oh my God.
Okay. I was gonna say
you put out these posts like you put hours into it, writing, do a thoughtful video, put this stuff together, put this stuff out.
That would be terrible. Why would you do that?
And then I put out a post just after Christmas. I was just fucking around changing the oil in my car. So I was waiting for that. And I did a post about, what your shoes say about you and your lower body training. I put it together.
I thought it was hilarious.
6,500 likes. It's just, and you think, is it Rick and Morty where he's like, your boos do nothing. I've seen what you cheer for.
Yeah. Like it's very accurate and a good illustration of kind of like, you ever hear the stat, fake news travels like 10 times faster than real, like true news? Like that's kind of what it's like. And I think,
look at this, right? It's like this book, I recommend you read it. It's called Trust Me, I'm Lying. It's by Ryan Holiday.
Yes, Ryan Holiday, yeah.
Media manipulation. And one of the things he talks about, like, cynically, I obviously intend to piss people off on social media.
Yeah, good job.
What it is because the algorithm feeds outrage, and the strength or quality of your message, your persuasion, is worthless if you don't first have the attention of people to persuade them. And one of the things he talks about is like, cynically in the media and blogging, it's like, you don't have to be right. Like all you have to do is just put out the story, whatever. If you're wrong, you just say, here's a correction, but nobody ever reads the correction. Like you said, it's like they pay attention to what's first, what's fast, and then, correction or whatever. It's like, no.
You have to like, what's funny is I'll have people walk up to me and say stuff like, I had an interaction with a social media like star, quote unquote, as like 2 million followers. I was at Overtime Elite, and I have people asking me about like, that this other program, and I'm like, how do I communicate how do I give my elevator pitch about like, do I pretend to be dumb? Do I go on a rant? Do I what's the best way to deal with the situation? Because then you get the flip side of that. But yeah, I think like I think early on I probably did appeal to that because I was pissed off. Like I was pissed off at misinformation. So I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this? What is this person saying? This is completely untrue. It's like, I would just say it in a way as like, it's objectively false. Like, here's the data that is contrary to it. There's mountains of it. And here's the fact denier saying it's true. And then people will get pissed off at me. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah. They don't. I've noticed as well, and it varies by platform. I think you have to be mindful of the platform and the message that you're using.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I could write a 3,000 word blog post spelling out exactly why I think, so-and-so coach is wrong when they put out bullshit information. Or I could just put up a video of them standing on a Bozu ball saying that it makes them faster and just flash up, no, you're wrong. No, you're not. They're not getting faster. And then put a meme and that will get thousands of people's attention.
Have you gotten people's, like, those coaches' attentions that you troll?
Fuck yeah. That same guy.
Okay. Have you ever trolled me and I didn't even know about it? Like, have I been trolled? Let's go, baby.
No, I mean, yeah, the same guy messaged me offline and was you seem to have put me in a box. And I said, you've put yourself in a box by saying clearly ridiculous things, which take 5 seconds to refute. And it's like, don't do that. And then I won't highlight when you're clearly wrong. And what it is, it's like, to me, public statements invite public replies. And when you try and move the conversation offline, it's because you don't want the scrutiny of the reply and the discussion being held in public. Yeah.
And I welcome it. I'm the type of person, I always say, like, you know, I always admit when I'm wrong. I'm the first person to admit when I'm wrong. Like, I was wrong. Like, there's power in being humble enough to be like, I was wrong.
There are things out there on the internet where I know I was wrong, but I've left up. So when somebody points out I'm wrong, cool. Like, I've got blog posts going back like 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah, I'm sure I have shit as well that is like that. Yeah. But like, someone brings it up and it's like, yeah, I was wrong. Like, what I said was false. And then like, when you do that, people are like, oh, it's like, yep, I learned. Yep, we're moving forward, onward. And then like, it gives you then, and that point you end up still being right, because you're like, yeah, I was wrong. Now I'm right, because I admitted I was wrong, and now I'm currently right. And, it gives you, like, it empowers you. And I always welcome open discussions. Like, I love debates. If someone wants to debate with me, like, and they're like, oh, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about this? Well, how do you do this? I'm like, okay, well, evidence says X, Y, and Z. And here's my experience. This is X, Y, and Z. And they're like, well, I heard this one time. And I'm like, and then they're like, and it does this. And I'm like, okay, where did you get that from? And have you seen that yourself? Or is it just working? If you have, is there other people that have seen that? Like, and then you can kind of like call out fallacies. Like, people love just being like, well, this guy said it, so it must be true. And it's like, well, just because he said it and he's like a researcher, I think there's like a researcher that he posts pretty frequently on Instagram all the time. And someone like literally shit on him publicly. And like, he like deleted all the comments, deleted the posts and stuff like that. And then like, you kind of have that situation where you more or less are avoiding the inevitable by doing it. You know what I mean? And then it like pigeonholes you into the situation where you're like, oh, fuck, now I even look dumber because I decided to argue with all these people that were actually right, instead of just like eating it and being like, it is what it is. Also, can you hear me still, or this might have taken off my headphones?
Yeah. I was going to say, I actually have to go pick up my kid. So
we didn't even get into jump training at all.
Dude, honestly, this podcast went nowhere near where I thought it was going to go, but it was still very enjoyable. It was very.
I would definitely love to get on one and actually talk about training, but I think like we have very similar approaches to training. So it's like, we don't have to talk about training as much as we can just talk about the other stuff that no one else talks about that you don't know unless you're in it. But yeah, feel free to do that.
Where can people find you online? What's your details?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, if you guys want to look me up, I'm John Evans _THP, and then Isaiah is Isaiah Rivera _ I think 1, and he's also someone good to follow. And then also THP Strength on Instagram. Those are probably the 3 most common. You can also find us on TikTok, but we really post on Instagram. And then our website is thpstrength.com.
We'll get that all in the notes, man. Awesome.
Thank you, Kier, for having me on. I don't know if I said your name correctly, but
congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.